Over the past 9 months, more than 100 American-built robots have been driving themselves into combat zones in Ukraine. Not drones, ground vehicles. Some of them have already been destroyed. And the company that built them just revealed, for the first time, exactly how it happened. This is the largest deployment of autonomous ground vehicles in combat by any U.S. defense company ever. Here's what it actually tells us about the future of war. The company is called Forterra, a U.S. autonomous vehicle startup that's raised more than $500 million in venture funding. Their vehicle is called the Lancer, a multi-mission ground robot built on a modified Polaris Ranger, the same kind of off-road vehicle you'd see in a hardware store catalog, not a defense contractor's brochure. That's actually the point. Instead of building an expensive purpose-made military robot from scratch, Forterra took a cheap, mass-produced commercial vehicle and bolted on autonomy. The result? A robot that's disposable enough to actually risk losing in combat, which is exactly what modern war demands. Here are the actual numbers. 105 Lancer vehicles delivered to Ukraine in under 6 months. Combined, they've driven more than 2,500 miles across over 1,100 missions, mostly logistics and combat support, moving supplies and equipment through areas too dangerous to send soldiers. The vehicles use Forterra's own navigation system, called AutoDrive, which lets them move across rough terrain without GPS, something that matters enormously in a war where GPS jamming is now routine. They also run a communications layer called Vector, designed specifically to keep working when networks are degraded or actively being attacked. But here's the honest part, and it's the part that matters most. Right now, Ukrainian soldiers are mostly teleoperating these vehicles, driving them remotely, rather than letting them act fully on their own. The vehicles can navigate autonomously across terrain, but they're not yet reliable enough to identify an unexpected enemy force and react correctly without a human in the loop. Since Russia's full invasion in 2022, drones have become responsible for a significant share of daily casualties on both sides. Ground robots are the next logical step in the same pattern. Remove soldiers from the most dangerous repetitive missions, resupply runs, casualty evacuation, forward positioning, without giving up the mission. One Ukrainian soldier quoted in the reporting put it bluntly: "Attrition is simply a fact of this battlefield. Vehicles get destroyed. The Lancer has already lost several units in combat, and the soldier's request back to Forterra wasn't make it smarter. It was make it cheaper, so more of them can be built and lost without it mattering." Forterra isn't stopping at logistics. They've also unveiled a new platform called the MESA, a more heavily modular version of the same concept, designed for force protection and mission-specific equipment, and already tied into U.S. Marine Corps and Special Operations programs. The bigger signal here isn't really about one company or one vehicle. It's that autonomous ground warfare has moved out of the demo phase and into actual sustained combat use, funded directly by the U.S. government as part of its broader support for Ukraine. War zones have effectively become the fastest, harshest testing ground for autonomy that will eventually filter into commercial robotics, logistics, and even disaster response back home. The uncomfortable truth is that these vehicles aren't succeeding because they're smart. They're succeeding because they're cheap enough to lose. That's a very different kind of military technology story than the one we're used to hearing. No 6th-generation fighter jets, no trillion-dollar programs, just a modified ATV, some open-source style engineering, and a war that's brutal enough to prove it in the field. If you want the next video breaking down exactly how GPS-denied autonomous navigation actually works, let me know in the comments.